This episode of Your Willing Heart is brought to you by Spenga. Designed to improve endurance, strength, and flexibility in just 1 hour, Spenga offers an unparalleled fitness experience. Go to Spenga.com to book your first class.
Welcome back to Your Willing Heart, where we unpack your questions about love, life, and everything in between. I'm Jessica Lowry.
And I'm Ingo Weigold, and this is episode 2. Today we're talking about sex, relationships, and sticky situations.
Yeah. This is Jen, as in gin and tonic. She will be our guest today, but she is not very lively, so she will just sit and look pretty for us.
Yes. Yeah, she's not moving. She might be here the whole show, you know?
She has it her way, and this is where she wants to go.
Yes.
She has full reign of this place.
Pretty much. And before we start with the questions, there's actually something very exciting that happened recently. Jessica over here has released a book called Red Leather. I have it here in my hand.
So it's called Red Leather, and it is a bunch of my journal entries from a journal I bought in the year after my divorce, and I wanted to share that with people. It was mostly for myself to just have those emotions validated in a book. It's available on lulu.com as well as Barnes & Noble and Amazon if anyone is interested in reading into a little bit of my heart.
Mm-hmm. It's an easy read, very personal. I think a lot of people can get a lot of enjoyment out of it. So,
Jen disapproved.
Yeah, she's like, forget that book. I'm out of here.
It's okay. She'll be back.
Shall we get to some questions,
Let's
Jessica?
do it. All right. Question number one is from Julie from Woodridge.
Ooh.
Julie asks, what is it like to talk to a therapist about sex?
Ooh. Scary, frightening, horrific.
And they're judging you.
They're
everything
judging
you.
They're most likely going to make fun of you while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be exposed to pornographic material on a regular basis, and you'll leave terrified.
With money out of your pocket.
Correct.
Next question.
No, I think there's a kind of a misnomer. People think that you go in and talk to a therapist about sex, and yeah, it's a little awkward, but they're trained to have these conversations, and they're using terms, like penis, vagina. They're talking about things about anatomy specifically, or they have very much experience with different types of situations, Mm-hmm. So typically people come in to a sex therapist or a therapist that they want to talk to you about sex with specific problems. Let's say, erection issues, right? And then they come in and they talk to a therapist about this, and the therapist will dig further and kind of start to investigate what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, that is not the actual problem. They find that the man is having erection problems because he's having conflict with his wife, and then you start to have this conversation about how you communicate better and all these things go on, and you get to the root of the problem, and lo and behold, the erection comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think a sex therapist will first rule out physical.
Mm-hmm.
If they'll ask you probably if you've seen a doctor recently, there's probably going to be some kind of questionnaire which can get pretty involved.
Sure.
Which is in your best interest to fill out truthfully.
Yeah, that's one of the things about sex therapy is if you're going to go and see a sex therapist, you got to be as honest as you can be,
yes.
Because otherwise there's really no point to it. You can beat around the bush as much as you want, but you're kind of wasting your own time anyway. So it's kind of weird just getting into the nitty-gritty of it, but that's what they're there for, and whatever you share with them, they have probably heard before. So it's a time of honesty and trust, really, that you kind of got to obtain pretty fast, but they're trained in it, and it's something that's beneficial. But yeah, there's a difference between physical ailments and psychological ailments, and sometimes they intertwine. So like Ingo said, the therapist will rule out physical ailments because why are we going to sit and talk about emotional issues if it's actually something that can be treated by a doctor or a physician? So that'll be ruled out, and psychological issues are always shown through body, somatic symptoms. We don't realize it, like hair loss, right? When someone's stressed out or depressed, they can lose their hair. Mm-hmm. There's always a reason behind it. So that has to be ruled out if it's something that needs medical attention, first and foremost.
Yeah, and I know people get nervous about this, but I guarantee you there's very little chance that the therapist you go to see has not heard of your problem.
Sure.
And definitely they will not judge you. And a lot of times I think they do a really good job of kind of normalizing your situation. And if you go in even just once, you might feel a lot better about the fact that, hey, I'm not the only one in the whole world who has this issue,
Right.
So there's always that.
Yeah, and the field of sex therapy is very wide and very large. So clearly, issues are not uncommon. So just
Absolutely.
kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, normalizing things.
Thank you, Julie, for the question.
Thank you, Julie. Hope we
Solid.
helped.
Yes.
Mike from Indianapolis. Ooh, we're branching out of the state.
There we go.
How do you respectfully ask your partner if they've been tested and are disease-free before sleeping with them, asking for a friend?
Okay. Okay, Mike. Your friend, your hypothetical friend, who has this issue with their partner. Do you want to take this one, or you want me to go?
Well, first, I think it depends on the nature of your relationship as well as the length of it. If this is kind of like a hookup situation, it could be a little bit more difficult because you kind of have to ask while that person's still somewhat of a stranger and you're not really completely comfortable with it. Now, when it comes to your...
Which you should be using protection if that is the case.
Totally, and we know
Please.
that always happens all the time.
Please use protection.
Right. If you're hooking up with people, that's cool, that's fine. But if you want to protect yourself and you're concerned enough to ask a question like this, I say just ask it. Also, though, are they going to be honest in their response?
You don't know that. I mean, it's hard to say. I think a lot of times people ask these questions just to feel less anxious about the fact they're about to have protected or unprotected sex with someone, you know. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people ask this question after they've already had sex a bunch of times, mm-hmm. you know. So I think you can never know if it's true or not unless barring like somebody shows you physical test results that happened recently.
Right.
Which I'm sure people do that.
People do.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think it's important to be open about it. You can be tactful. You can be like, you know, hey, since we're having sex, mm-hmm. Have you ever had unprotected? Ask questions like, have you had unprotected sex with anyone? Have you been tested recently? Have you ever had an STD? Yeah. You know, and maybe reveal that about yourself as well. You know, abstaining from sex is going to be the number one way not to get an STD, but we all know no one's doing that. Right. So for those who are having sex, just be open and honest, and don't be afraid to say anything to that person. I mean, if you're willing to get naked in front of that person, I mean, how much more difficult is it just to ask them?
Sure, I get that, but I also feel like if the person that they're asking does have some sort of a disease or has had one, mm-hmm. I feel like people aren't going to really be completely honest about that.
No.
So it's kind of a crapshoot. Like, do you want to trust them or not, really? And yeah. Maybe sometimes it's your intuition you should follow. Like, sometimes there's someone who you kind of are concerned about it, just knowing their lifestyle or knowing a little bit about them. Yeah. Trust your gut with that maybe they have been in some sticky situations before. So it's you know, you're your own person. You can make your own decisions. But like Ingo said, yeah, I don't see a problem with just being honest about it and just asking, just being honest that you're concerned about it, but don't expect full honesty in return, because that's just something that people don't want to tarnish their reputation by throwing that out there that they've had an STD before. Right? So I don't know. I'd say it's your call. Ask it, believe it or not. You know, do what you got to do.
If it makes you feel better, yeah. And there's a lot of women out there, I think, and guys who kind of don't get into sexual relationships with someone until it's been kind of established that they are only having sex with each other. So that's another way to kind of get around that too. Sure. I know sometimes that's hard if you're, I think that the younger culture might be out more and these things happen, one night stands, whatever. And now with the dating apps, it's common, that can happen. But that's another way you can protect yourself, I think, from that kind of situation.
I wonder too how many people actually know that they have an STD.
I don't know. Is there anyone out there? I don't know if anyone will ever answer this, but has there? If anyone is watching that's ever been diagnosed with an STD without knowing they had one, and maybe they had no symptoms, that can happen. You know.
Sure.
Let us know. You know. Send us an email.
Let us know. Have you ever talked about it with anybody? Especially if it's an STD that could be cured. I would imagine that no one would ever want to discuss it another day in their life that they had something and then it's gone. Yes. So I don't know. That's an interesting topic, but it's a crapshoot if you don't really know the person, or if you don't, you're not in a committed relationship. It could go either way.
Even then, it could be a crapshoot.
Sure, for sure. Yeah. Just do what makes your heart content.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
All right.
Thank you, Mike from
Indy. Okay, this viewer has requested to be anonymous. I used to be able to think about sex and I would get hard. Nowadays, I'm finding it difficult to get it up with my partner at times. Very confused as my woman is a knockout. What gives?
Ooh.
It's a loaded question.
Did this viewer who sent in this question give us any idea on how old he might be?
They did not.
Okay.
It is a male, though, obviously.
Well, obviously. I don't know that women ask questions about not being able to get it up. That'd be weird, but you never know.
I'm
I mean,
thinking the fact that they're confused about not being able to get it up makes me think that they're relatively young.
young. Okay. So a couple of things. I mean, obviously the first. You don't mind if I start? Do you?
Go ahead.
Okay. Given that I'm a guy,
Right, you know more about
Sometimes.
this for sure. Yeah,
I can be a woman
you know
sometimes too, but for today I'm a guy. So if you're younger and I would hope the first step would be to rule out physical. Go to your doctor. Make sure it's not some kind of hormonal issue. Make sure you don't have. It could be a million of things. It could be some kind of over-the-counter drug you're taking. There's a lot of side effects guys can have from antihistamines, pain medication, even stuff like Advil.
Blood pressure medication as well.
Yeah, stuff for depression can cause erectile dysfunction. If you're out partying a lot, if you're smoking a lot of pot, doing drugs, drinking a lot, all of those things can affect that. If you're not getting enough sleep, it can lower testosterone. You might want to have your testosterone checked. That's another symptom of that. Outside of that, I would take a look at porn use. I think that's a thing nowadays for the younger generation. Like when I grew up, porn was like Playboy. You might find a hustler every once in a while in a magazine. Versus like nowadays.
Wow, what were those days like, Grandpa?
Well, they were more fun, I think.
Paper.
Yeah, paper.
Ooh.
Nowadays, you can go on your mobile device, or whatever, computer, anywhere nowadays, and you can go to you can type in any kind of weird thing you're interested in, and up will pop a website. So I think the younger culture has way more ability to be exposed to this, and it kind of rewires the brain. As you're cycling through porn over and over and over again, you're kind of burning out those receptors in your brain because you're constantly getting stimulated, which that's not what real sex is like at all. It's not. It's one person not clicking through a million pages, constantly changing the stimulus.
Right.
So I'd take a look at that. I would be curious if the anonymous question, if that person is using porn in a way that might be damaging his ability to have an erection.
Absolutely.
Also, there's, of course, the psychological. So there could be anxiety. There could be issues of maybe you've had this happen one time, and now every time you go to have sex, there's all this pressure that's building up, and you're so worried about the fact that it's not going to work. And like I said in the last episode, you can't will an erection, and you certainly can't have an erection when you're anxious. So,
sure,
yeah.
Absolutely. Also, look into other aspects of your relationship with that woman who is a knockout, as you say, because someone could be beautiful and you can still be attracted to them, but if other aspects of your relationship are kind of going to shit, like you guys are fighting all the time, or maybe she's bickering with you about something, that can be a big turnoff, and that definitely leaks into the bedroom without us even realizing it. There is really not much of a separation between actual life and then the bedroom with sex. Things always leak into the other, different aspects. So maybe something's going on in your relationship that is kind of turning you off without you maybe even realizing it. Maybe you do realize it but didn't think that it could affect you sexually, but it definitely can. So look into things like that as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I thought of too, this came up in our class that we had. If this could be not true for you, but for example, if your partner is wanting to have children, for example, or there's that idea of children, and every time you have sex, you don't want children, for example, and maybe you're worried about that you might become pregnant. Maybe you guys are doing the pull-out method, which we know is like 50-50. It's kind of like not any better, if people out there are doing that, so you're worried about.
It doesn't work because of the Cowper's gland, but that's another.
So you're worried about maybe impregnating your partner subconsciously, and that could be that. And sometimes just putting a goalie, so to speak, in there, maybe there's birth control or some kind of contraception that you're not using. But I guess this is a hard question to answer because we don't have enough information.
Yeah, but take a look into those things and see if maybe it's one of them, because more than likely it is.
Yeah.
People don't just out of nowhere stop getting erections. There's always a reason for it.
Yes.
So wean out the physical ailments. If it's not that, then it's most likely psychological or just an issue going on in your relationship.
Yeah.
All right. This viewer has also requested to be anonymous, and I know why.
These are getting raunchy, huh?
So.
All right.
Ooh, anonymous says, I recently found out that my girlfriend watches rough group gangbang porn, where it's just one girl and lots of different men. Our sex is pretty regular, but also pretty vanilla. She has never hinted at wanting to try something new with me. Should I talk to her about it? Should I be concerned?
Wow. That is a handful.
Sure is.
So maybe you should start, given that from a female perspective.
So this was the first thing that I thought of when I read this question. I thought about females and sexual fantasies, and that it's a little more cliche and common, really, that men are the ones who have sexual fantasies and women just kind of go with the flow or are just pretty traditional. This is obviously untrue. I think it's a weakness in our culture, our sexual culture in this country, that women really don't have an outlet to express their sexual desires. And that doesn't mean that their sexual desires are not there. They're just a little bit repressed. And some women have to find an outlet for that. So perhaps this female, her outlet is watching porn. She's watching a gangbang porn. She obviously has a sexual fantasy or a fetish or something along those lines of gangbang situations or being dominated like that by lots of men. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
So first and foremost, I think it's important to honor that sexual fantasy that she may have, rather than becoming intimidated by it, or maybe upset by it, or offended by it. I think that's the first thing that needs to be established, is that it's okay that she may have that fantasy, whether you knew about it or not.
Well, while you were talking, I was looking up something. There's a book. It's called My Secret Garden, Women's Sexual Fantasies. It's by Nancy Friday. It's kind of an older book, but I recommend that you and or your partner, girlfriend, he said, girlfriend, might take a look at this, because this has a lot. This woman went out and interviewed a bunch of women and put out a book that talks about all of their sexual fantasies. And it's actually very erotic reading, and it's way out there in some respects, but it will give you an idea into the window of what a female, and probably guys too, but this is from a woman's perspective, how they can use sexual fantasies to enhance their sexuality as a being. You know, it's not necessarily something to be afraid of. I think it's obviously concerning to you, and you want to talk to her about it. You know, the problem is too, if he kind of saw this by accident, she might look at it as he's snooping on her.
Right.
But at the same time, this is a good opportunity for you guys to kind of have an open conversation and talk to her. Now, it may be that she does want to do this. Most likely, it's just a fantasy, and it's something that gets her going.
Right.
And you could maybe you start by buying her this book and say, hey, I was watching this podcast, and they recommended this cool book. They thought it might be something neat, and I maybe read some of it, and you'll get a better idea of, like, because some of this stuff is way out there. I'm talking like crazy stuff you would never think of, but you know.
And that's what a fantasy is, right? It's things that you would never think of doing in real life, and that's what leaves them to be a fantasy. Something that you kind of want to do, but it's just going to be kept in your mind, right?
Yes.
If you actually do it, then it's not a fantasy. It's been completed, right?
Yes.
So she may not necessarily want to participate in gangbangs or in, you know, menage a trois or whatnot, but it may get her going, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. She may prefer in real life to have sex with you, only you, in whatever way you have sex with her, but this may be a fantasy that she gets off on her own, and that's okay. If you're concerned that she is hiding it or not sharing it with you because she is either embarrassed or maybe actually wants to do it, you could still approach her with it and say, hey, I noticed this on your computer. What's going on? Are you into that? And really kind of lead it into an open communication, so that she doesn't feel ashamed by it, first of all, and that she can just really express herself with you. I think that if she hadn't shared it with you, it could mean that she doesn't feel comfortable sharing it with you, or maybe you guys don't have that kind of communication where you can talk about stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel honestly, it's up to the guy to provide an environment for a woman to feel open to express herself sexually.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you haven't done that, but you say you're having regular but vanilla sex, and I don't know why that is. Maybe you guys have never really explored.
Right.
But this is a good opportunity for you to kind of take the lead and say, hey, you know, maybe say, you know what, I've been thinking like I'd like to try a few things. Like maybe it would be fun if we talked about some things we fantasize about. Not that we have to do them, but and then share something. I know you have fantasies. I know you do. So maybe share something of your own and kind of start moving the ball in that direction. And if you're concerned she might take you snooping as the wrong way, you can kind of open it that way. And eventually she might feel comfortable to share that with you. Because you really shouldn't be afraid of that. If that's something she wants, there's no way you're going to be able to stop her from doing that.
Right.
It's something you should discuss. And most likely by discussing it, the fantasy, she'll feel more comfortable. And then she probably has other fantasies too. And you can role play, and maybe you'll feel at some point that, hey, it's not something she really wants to do in real life, but it's erotic to you that she thinks about these things. So,
yeah.
Yeah,
I think talking about it could really open up the doors to a lot of fun stuff for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vanilla sex should not be a thing. So, especially considering you're calling it vanilla sex, that should probably change. Because it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
Let's be granola.
Ooh, muesli.
With some chocolate chips.
Chocolate chips, Rocky Road.
So that's it for our questions today. We have something called He Says, She Says.
It's a new segment.
Which is a segment we're adding to the end of our shows. And it is, again, from a viewer. This is from Jackie from Houston, Texas. So she says,
Hi, Jackie.
My husband is constantly saying that I don't give him enough time.
Oof.
He says I make our kids the priority and that there's never anything left for him. I think our kids should be number one. He says our marriage should be number one. Who is right?
Uh-oh. I think we're going to get some flack for this one.
I think this is such a relevant and common thought in marriages and couples with children,
Very much
especially
so.
young children.
Yeah, I think guys a lot of times get pushed to the side. I mean, just talking to some of my guy friends and having experienced some of that on my own is sometimes the guy is below even the family dog because everybody needs something, and at some point we feel like I'm just here to make a paycheck. That's all I do, that's my priority, and I don't get any love and support when I come home. Maybe you're working long days and you walk in the door, and here's the baby. You don't even get like a hey or a kiss or anything, and never mind there's no sex, whatever, no intimacy. Who's right and who's wrong? I think you're both right. But I will say that just like they tell you on an airline, when it comes to the mask, they always say put it on yourself first and then the child. There's a reason for that. If your marriage is dysfunctional, your children are going to grow up seeing that. And you two have to be strong in order to provide an environment for the kids to feel safe.
Yes.
And that's a very healthy thing.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times women have a lot of pressure from other women to be these super moms, which is total bullshit most of the time because you're seeing externally the best version of other people when inside they're going crazy because they're just trying to keep up with everybody else.
Yes.
And what they should be really doing is focusing on their partner, building some sort of a team, and raising the kids together, but still making time. Always be dating each other.
Right.
That's the key, I think.
Right. And we were talking about this earlier, where people get married and they love each other and they're best friends and whatnot. Then they have kids. And it's almost like when the kids come, the couple getting to know each other stops, right?
Yeah.
You don't really learn anything more about each other. So then it turns into this weird dynamic where it's like two strangers raising kids together. So how do you expect to get on the same page as your partner if you don't know what they're thinking, how they're feeling, how their day was, how their week was, how their month was? It's important. That intimacy is important, sexually or non-sexually. It's important, and that comfort and being there for each other is important, and that will always spill out into how you raise your kids together, how smooth that goes, and what your kids see of you in your relationship. That impacts them tremendously, especially in young ages. So I think that you're right. I think they're both right. Kids are a priority, but so is the relationship in a marriage. Just because kids are made does not mean that this is done, right? That the couple is done getting to know each other. That is an ongoing thing, and it should always be ongoing forever. Forever.
Yeah.
There's this weird phenomenon where after kids graduate high school and go to college, you see a bunch of divorces. And it's because there's nothing left, right? The kids have left, and everything that people have piled all their energy into nurturing for 18 years is gone, and you're left with someone who is now a stranger.
Like, who are you, right? Who is
Yeah.
this person I'm with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's important. And so I think, right, you're both right, but one is not more right than the other. They both are important. Raising kids are very important, and making them priorities important. Raising kids will be much harder if you don't make your relationship a priority.
Yeah.
Is what I think.
We talked, part of this conversation earlier was too about communication is key, but also respect is key. You have to be able to respect each other and what you each bring to the table.
Right.
You know, sometimes in the traditional family, the woman takes care of the home and takes care of the children, and the man goes out and earns a living for the family. And they have to figure out a way to kind of be respectful of that, of each other, because sometimes resentment can build where a man feels like he's not valued, or a woman feels like she's not valued because she doesn't bring an income and he's not that involved with the kids. But at the same time, you're building a family unit, and you have to be very careful that there's that respect.
Right. Know your roles. Know that each role is vital to the nurturing of your family, and keep that respect for what you each do. You both do different things at different times, but you're a team, and that respect has to be nurtured and valued.
Yeah. Go on a date, guys. Seriously.
Yeah. Go get some ice cream.
Go on a few
without
dates.
your children.
Yeah, with no kids.
Just leave them at home.
Yeah.
No.
Even just 1 hour.
No, don't do that.
Well,
Get a babysitter.
We don't know how old the kids are, but yeah.
Leave a
It's
3-year-old
a really
home.
great
just
question.
leave. They're sleeping.
They're sleeping. Yeah, okay. Wow. Got anything else for this episode?
That is it for today.
All right. Well, if you have questions for us, please keep in mind, you can always post comments down below. You can also send us questions to questions@YourWillingHeart.com, and we will get them on a future episode. And we want to thank everyone who sent questions in today.
Yeah, thank you everyone who participated in our podcast. We appreciate all your views.
Yes. My name is Ingo Weigold.
I'm Jessica Lowry, and thank you so much for watching.